3 full days of walking, drinking, and playing video games has finally caught up with me, but holy crap, was it worth it, because I got to go to PAX 2022 thanks to the people of PAX for inviting me. And while the bigwigs of PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo were there, that doesn't mean there weren't games to actually play and get my hands on with. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different and do a video of my experience of PAX 2022 Australia, as well as the games I took a look at, the games I'm most hopeful for, as well as a sleeper hit that I might think might be my game of the year. So if you're wondering whether you should go to next year's PAX or what the event is a bit about, then maybe this video might be for you. Firstly, thanks to Ubisoft Australia, I got to take a look at a closed-door session of Skull and Bones, the upcoming title that uses the gameplay stylings of Assassin's Creed Black Flag and turns it into its own game, sort of. Now, it was showed off at the Ubisoft Forward event a couple of weeks back, and while I didn't get hands-on with the experience of the game this time around, it was a 30-minute pure gameplay presentation, and it kinda has me low-key excited for the game. There were some gameplay moments that we got to see our character walking around pirate outposts and accepting missions and contracts before we get to our ship. Now, the video and the gameplay did emphasize two things, one of which is obvious, and it's your ship and how weapons and hull customization is key to certain missions. There are multiple different cannons to equip and hull upgrades to have, and also different styles of ship to use.
But there's no ship that can match the Interceptor for speed.
Skull and Bones also has and plays a bit of a PvP or a PvPvE game where you and 19 other players, and there's different kinds of ships for you to play as, can all go around and play together. Now, there is a tank style class of ship, which is a giant behemoth style of ship, which is used to absorb damage. There is a DPS class, which is, I don't really know sailing terms, but it is a medium-sized ship.
I'm sorry, it's such a pretty boat. Ship.
And then there is a healing class, which is a small, fast ship where you can quickly heal the tank and DPS ships for your crew if you're playing with friends. From the gameplay and the possible shenanigans you can have with your friends, when Skull and Bones releases in March of 2023, I'll definitely be taking a look at it. Now, without any AAA games releasing or any demos available, this put a huge spotlight on two things. One of which being gaming accessories like keyboards, controllers, headsets, or racing and flight sims, and boy was there some cockpits. For starters, Red Bull, the energy drink company, but more importantly, the Formula 1 team that has been dominating this year. Yeah, they had a booth with the F1 2021 car just sitting there, but they had a simple F1 playseat for people to set up and try and put down their hottest times around the Red Bull ring, which, while it was a cool setup, it personally didn't hit for me. Now, I got to finally try out one of the $2,500 place seat cockpits, which I'd been eyeing off for years. And this was a comfy seat, all for about 30 seconds before I realized my breaking leg foot, if you will, was falling asleep and cramping hard. That, and they had a 15-year-old Thrustmaster wheel strapped to the cockpit, and it was like driving the Alpha Saab limo from Top Gear. The wheel honestly felt like it was going to come out of its mount, but thankfully, there was a steering wheel cockpit setup that flat blew me away, and that was the Next Level Racing and Thrustmaster stand. Thanks to my friend's Attack on Geek, he captured some clips of me absolutely loving this cockpit. Honestly, I don't know how I'll go back to my existing cockpit at home. Now, they ran the Thrustmaster TSXW setup with the Ferrari SF1000 wheel with a motion platform cockpit that gave 3 users 3 laps around Monza because, well, you're using a Ferrari wheel, you're driving a Ferrari, so it makes sense like how with Red Bull you would be driving in a Red Bull playseat around the Red Bull ring. But as a fan of the series, this motion cockpit had me fully immersed in the game, or more so fully immersed in the game. If your wheel kicks out over a corner, the arse in your seat physically kicks out. It also makes it more of a challenge to keep control of the car, as when the cockpit kicks out and moves around, it also moves your arms around too. And honestly, this was fantastic. The other thing that basically got everyone else's floor attention besides gaming accessories was indie titles. And this year there were some fantastic ones, with one being a competitor with Cult of the Lamb for my potential indie game of the year, and I'll get to that in a minute. Now, Cult of the Lamb did also have a booth at PAX, and they sold out all of their merch within the first day, which was bonkers. Some of the indie games that caught my attention I got to check out were Bitmap's Galaxy's Random Mine, which is a fun Spelunky style game which just had a nice simple charm to it. Another indie title which caught my eye, which I'll be taking a look at when it releases, was New Zealand developer Black Salt Games' Dredge, which is a fishing game that has a Lovecraftian horror style setting to it, which immediately caught my eye with its simplistic yet fantastic art stylings. When it releases in 2023, I'll definitely be taking a look at this. Playing multiplayer horror or survival games with the lads has always been something we've had a bit of fun with, and Deep Field Games' Abiotic Factory is a retro styled, or similar to that say of Half-Life, where a science experiment has gone wrong and you basically need to survive and try to escape, and the kicker is, you're scientists, you're not great at combat.
But wait! There's more!
But one of the best indie games that immediately had me hooked, and yes, will be one of my next video game reviews, is a game called Justice Sucks Tactical Vacuum Action, developed by Samurai Punk, where you play as a killer robot vacuum cleaner who protects his house from Home Alone style invasions. You'll stalk the robbers, you'll hide under beds, you'll turn on smart devices like speakers or fans to knock enemies out or to distract them before you kill them, and hide the body and their blood by sucking them up and eating them. This was an indie game that had me going back to their stall a fair few times to try out the demo, then I got my mates to check it out, and then I even got myself an enamel pin and a t-shirt from this game. Now, outside of the main floor of PAX, Bethesda had their own World of Bethesda event, which was awesome, and I got to meet a heap of other content creators and make some new friends from this, and that's something, at least when it comes to conventions in Melbourne, no one else really has. PAX has an atmosphere around it where nearly everyone there is just cool, nice, genuine people. Comic conventions, while cool in their own right, have people come to these conventions and buy all the high-end collectibles that are on sale and then sell it on eBay for higher prices, where PAX is people wanting to check out games that they normally wouldn't get to check out, and meeting people they might have only met online, and that's exactly what happened, at least on my behalf. While the big developers and publishers and consoles didn't have booths at PAX this year, it was great to see the gaming community of Australia and New Zealand come together to hang out, to chat video games, and in some instances, head down to the board game section of the floor and just hang out. So about 60% of the floor is indie games and video games in general, where the other 40% or so is board games and retro video games, like the OG Doom played on an old school computer or arcade cabinets. In some instances, when I just felt overwhelmed, walking through the board games section was just a nice way to get away from the masses and check out some board games, because if it's not evident enough, I'm a massive nerd. On top of that, should you want to rest your feet, checking out a panel, and in my instance as well, supporting two friends at the same time, was a great way to rest up a bit, but also get involved with some really cool conversations, ideas, and topics. In short, while PAX 22 Australia was a great social event and it introduced me to some indie games that might not have made it onto my radar, it had a real community vibe to it. With the big publishers and developers not being there, this year's PAX felt more like a stretch before the marathon for next year's PAX, which will be 10 years anniversary in Australia. I can't wait to check out some of the games that I did see at PAX, and I cannot wait to see what PAX 2023 gives us.